Every September, Russian state TV usually drowns you in harvest bragging. Record wheat, bumper corn, smiling ministers, perfect charts. Russia is usually the breadbasket, right? Not this September. In September 2025, the bragging is gone. Official channels are quiet, officials look away, and the numbers don't show up much. What happened to the record harvests? Why the sudden silence? Tonight, I will show you what they won't say and what it could mean for prices, experts, and Russians' grocery bills. The question is simple. Are food shortages ahead? Or it's just a very bad year for Russia? Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. As usual, you will not find any propaganda, lies, or BS here. Instead, you'll find lots of truth, common sense, and logic, and some emotions too, because I am Russian and I'm a human being after all. Before I start, this live stream consists of 3 parts, about 25-minute long update on current state of Russian agriculture, 30 minutes, a little less, around 30 minutes live stream chat, where I answer questions live, and anything you answer me, really, and a prayer list at the end. Praying together at the end. There are 3 issues in the fall of 2025 to watch for in Russia. First is the geopolitics, how Vladimir Putin is outplaying everyone by dealing with Donald Trump, flying and meeting in the USA and China, sending drones into Poland. Second is the sharp decline in Russian economy that affects all areas of life. And third is current situation in Russian agriculture. Now, first 2 issues are being widely discussed, and Russian propaganda is actually leading the discussions. But when it comes to Russian agriculture, there is a completely different story. It is mostly silence these days. Very unusual, as September is the bragging season, and it comes from the days of the USSR. This September, it's silence. Now, when you see silence of certain things in Russia, you know it's trouble. If agriculture was in good shape, then we would be hearing about the good shape. And now we aren't hearing anything. Before I show you what's going on in the industry, I want to explain why agriculture is so important for Russia. It's going to be a very brief explanation. Now, Russia's story starts in the soil. A huge swath of the country sits on the Chernozem, the central black earth belt. And this is some of the most fertile soils on earth. It's why Russia's southwest looks like endless farms and fields on satellite shots. For centuries, most Russians worked the land. And in the 1897 census, over 80% of people were peasants. 4 out of 5 people worked the land. So agriculture wasn't just an industry, it was society itself. Taxes, conscription, village life, the calendar, all tied to the harvest. And under the Soviets, the state's grip on grain, collectivization, quotas, procurements, decided who ate and who didn't. From 1931 to 1934, famine ravaged major grain regions. State policies and politics amplified the catastrophe in Ukraine, but Russia and Kazakhstan also suffered. Later, Moscow swung the pendulum the other way with the Virgin Lands campaign, plowing new wheat zones in northern Kazakhstan and Siberia to feed the system. Grain also built Russia's trade muscle. Before the World War I, the empire was one of the world's top grain exporters. By 1903, the top wheat exporter, and by 1913, roughly a quarter of globally traded wheat came from Russia, from Russian fields. Hard currency, railways, ports on the Black Sea, much of that grew around moving grain. Historically, when harvests in Russia failed, geopolitics moved. In 1972 and 73, after grain shortfalls, the USSR quietly bought US grain on a massive scale. It's called the Great Grain Robbery, sending world's prices flying and proving how domestic food gaps can become global shocks. Even recently, harvest equals policy. In Russia, there was a drought in 2010, and it forced Russian grain export ban to keep bread affordable at home. In 2014, counter sanctions on the Western food rewired imports and jump-started so-called import substitution, where imported foods and goods were forced to be replaced by Russian-made. And by the late 2010s, Russia turned into the world's wheat powerhouse, often number one exporter, making grain both revenue stream and a lever abroad. Today, the agriculture is strategy. Black Sea shipping, sanctions on grain vessels, Turkey's policy swings. These things can move prices from Cairo to Karachi, really, from like all over the world. When Russia's harvest stumbles, budgets, food prices, and foreign leverage all wobble. And that's why a bad year in the fields in Russia can become a national story fast. So, in short, in Russia, agriculture isn't just food, it's legitimacy, foreign currency, and geopolitical weight. Which is exactly why this year's silence from the officials matters. Now, let's talk about what's happening today. But before I jump there, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you. Thank you for being the part of this community, for watching my videos, liking, subscribing, sending messages, praying along with me, and sending you love. Thank you. Thank you so much for supporting financially through Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you so much. Without your support, it'd be really difficult for me to move forward, as I've been demonetized by Google for 13 months now for my stand against the war, against Russian government, against for peace, and for spreading the truth about Russia's transformation throughout the world. So thank you very much for your support. I promise you, demonetized or monetized, it doesn't matter. I will continue my stand. And your reason for that. Thank you very much. Now, let's talk what's happening in Russia today. It's interesting. A crisis. A crisis has been forecasted for over 3 years now. I've been forecasting the crisis myself, and I haven't been alone. There are plenty of experts who have been doing that. Knowing there would be a crisis actually has been easy. One doesn't need to be a rocket scientist to understand logic and common sense behind what's going on. So all you have to do is just to apply logic and common sense. There have been three major reasons that spelled disaster for Russian agriculture. They haven't been kept in secret. On the contrary, these reasons have been publicly discussed and, out there on the surface, okay? Everyone sees them. So these reasons, those factors, they are number one, lack of people, number two, lack of foreign seeds, and number three, rising costs. Now, let me explain these reasons in more detail. I'll be short, I promise. First, lack of people. Oh, it's pretty obvious. The mobilization of 2022 and the following soul buying has affected Russian villages a lot. In September 2022, in October 2022, the state grabbed 350,000 Russian men and threw them to the meat grinder in Ukraine. Now, 350,000 people was the official number, officially given us to the Minister of Defense and by the propaganda. But you know what? We can't trust those numbers. They lie. They lie all the time. So I've heard much bigger numbers from the range of 500,000 men to up to 1 million. I don't know which one is true, but I know it's much more than 350,000 men. And most men were grabbed from villages. The farmers went first. Most of those farmers, the first wave of the mobilization, now they're either dead or maimed. And obviously no one's been returned because all those mobilization contracts have been signed indefinitely. Okay, the war is still going on. People. There has been a huge blow to their agriculture by taking probably the best farmers, the most productive farmers, and throwing them to Ukraine. Number two, lack of foreign seeds. After the start of the war, Russian Minister of Agriculture banned Russian companies from buying foreign seeds, particularly from the Netherlands. Now, it's something I hadn't heard before the war. I mean, seeds. What's the big deal, right? Well, it turns out to be a pretty darn big deal. The Netherlands, as it turns out, is the world's seed modification center, or one of the biggest centers. They charge, they change seeds genetically to increase crops yield. And the Dutch are incredibly skilled at that. And Russians, as it turns out, were buying seeds from the Netherlands in large quantities for decades. I've heard different numbers, up to 40% of all seeds in Russia came from the Netherlands. Now, what happens when you replace the Dutch seeds with your own seeds, right? Because you do get seeds, you get harvest, and whatever you harvest, you keep some of it for seeds for the following year. Well, you still have crops growing the following year, but the yield is significantly less. It drops. The drop of yield is rather slow and gradual. It doesn't happen in the next year, but rather it drops by about 30% each year for 3 years. And on your third year, you get natural, unmodified seeds that produce significantly less. If they're not modified anymore, if they were modified, that produce so much more, right? So this has affected Russian agriculture. And let me remind you, this is year number 3 after the start of the war. This is harvest number 3. 2022, they still had the Dutch seeds. 2023, that was year's first ban. 2024 and 2025. This is year number 3. And then the third factor is rising costs of farming. And that's the overall situation in the Russian economy. So many factors: inflation, economic isolation of Russia, the international sanctions, cost of money. When Putin was telling Russians for 3 years that Russia was only getting stronger from the international sanctions, whoa, miracle, Putin's miracle, and the propaganda was seconding them. And I covered in my live streams dozens of times his speeches, his lies, Now, the sanctions were slowly working behind the propaganda on Russian farmers. Lack of Western machines, their service personnel, lack of companies that dealers of the foreign machines, lack of spare parts, skyrocketing costs of fertilizers, increased wages, record high cost of money has been driving profit margins lower and lower and lower every single year. Now combine all those three factors and you have a large agriculture crisis on your hands. And now I want to give you data. There's a little trick about this data, okay? It's been very difficult to obtain the data as Russian state doesn't like to share unfavorable data. Russian state is perfect, It's the best country in the world. It has the best values. The president of Russia is definitely the best president in the world, Vladimir the Great. The courts are just. The officials are caring, and generally the entire goal of Russian state is to serve Russian people, make their lives better. And the Russian state has been making lives of Russian people better every single year for the past 25 years. Well, that's the official picture, right? That's what we get when we turn on Russian TV, exactly what I just told you. The thing is, if data is bad, then this picture falls apart. I mean, if harvest, let's say, is the problems in agriculture, it means that the state has failed by applying wrong economic policies or not applying correct economic policies. So, and that can't be. I mean, Russian state, it's the best in the world, right? It's perfect. So the state doesn't like to release bad data. It rather ignores it, or if things are so bad, if they turn incredibly bad and catastrophic, it simply classifies data. It's simple. Right now, about 1/3 of important economic data in Russia is classified. Not agriculture, it's everything else. I don't know, from oil extraction to oil refining. How much of gas is actually gasoline produced in Russia? It's classified. What is the price of natural gas sold to China? It's classified. Why is it classified? Because it's none of your business. You peasant, you stay on the ground, don't ask questions. Because people there on top, they know better. They know what to tell you and what not to tell you, okay? You live happily after. Don't worry, be happy. That's the slogan of Russian government. Anyway, it's taken me a while to gather data, and I actually couldn't quite believe my eyes. Let me pull it up. Just give me a second here. Now, the data that it's really hard to get. I've had a hard time getting data from Russian agencies, Rostov, Ministry of Agriculture, and so forth. I was able to obtain some data from the news, from the meetings of Rostov governor with wheat growing farmers, but that's pretty much it. The very unusual place where I actually did find data was USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, because it gathers the data from all over the world, and it does gather data from Russia. Although we gotta treat this data with a grain of salt. Now, I'll tell you why. As of September 15th, 2025, here's where Russia's harvests stand and how it stacks up to last year. Wheat. This season's wheat is tracking in the mid-80s million metric ton. Now, USDA bases its research of Russian agriculture from two main sources. One source is the Ministry of Agriculture and Rosstat, Russia Statistics Agency, and the second is Sovecon. It's Russia's oldest research firm that specializes in providing agriculture information. But Sovecon firm also gets its data from the state agencies. And that data is more or less official. It just probably they have better ins and outs, the connections in the Russian state, but they report the data that is more or less goes with the official state data. Now, wheat. This season's wheat is near 87 million ton. And that is above 2024's harvest of 82 million ton. Odd. Barley. Estimated between 17.5 and 19 million ton for 2025. Again, it comes from USDA, and they use data coming from Sovecon. Last year landed near 16.7 million ton. Okay, and so this year 17.5 million is modest growth, unless late weather clips quality, and there's no data on the quality yet, because harvest is still happening of some crops in some regions. Russia is a very, very large country with different climates, different soils, So now, corn. USDA reports that Russia harvests 14.1 million ton for 2025. And this data comes from Sovecon, but Sovecon gives a range. It says that the final data could be a little less, 13.4 million ton. Well, that's roughly flat, or perhaps a little different than last year, 14 million ton. But that's somewhere, the same number. Sugar beets. After 45.1 million ton in 2024, that is Rosstat data. That is the final number for last year's harvest. The industry has rebounded from last year to 48-50 million ton this season. The numbers are still not final. So it's about 10% increase. Still, the exact numbers will depend on fall weather. Potatoes. So there are two parts of potato industry. Organized farm sector, which feeds retail and processors. in 2024 was 7.3 million ton. Officials say 2025 should be above that. And they quote 7.5, 7.6. So a little bit more than last year. And all farms, including household plots, people raise potatoes themselves in Russia, So the entire harvest is 17.8 million ton in 2024. And for 2025, we still don't know the numbers. Now, it took me a while to get that data, and, I was looking at it, and I didn't know what to say. Something doesn't add up, because this data that I just gave you, it certainly is not catastrophe. Far from it. It's not crisis. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. It doesn't look bad if you look at the data that USDA gives, but then USDA gets that data from Russia, from somewhere from inside the Ministry of Agriculture and Rosstat. Now, if that data was right on, there would be a lot to report on, to brag about. Look, not as bad as last year's harvest. At many sectors, at many crops, much better. How come there's silence? I don't understand. Everything seems to be okay. Well, you know what? I double check. Instead of just looking at the state data, USDA data, I look somewhere else. Because of two reasons. I know things are bad. I have been following the news for the past, since the planting season started in April. And I've seen troubles reported everywhere in different parts of agriculture. You know what? I want to show you something. Real stuff. Not the data that comes from Rosstat or Ministry of Agriculture, but I want to show you what a local news in Russia's largest agriculture region, Rostov province. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. And I even know a couple reporters who work in, I used to know them before I left Russia, in the media that I'm going to show you right now. So I open, and there's an agriculture part. And this is what can be seen. The media is called 161.ru. I've been using it as a source for quite some time. I trust the source because Russian propaganda, this is an independent source that independently owned. And of course, Russian propaganda controls the narrative. But this is the farthest media they reach to. So their control is not absolute. There are a lot of things that the local medias, just like 161.ru, can write and talk about. We have to take it with a little grain of salt, but I will give you the recipe how to, divide truth from not truth a little bit later. So this is scene number one. This media has an entire section. If you see right here, economy, agrarian crisis. And this is what they have to say. This is the digest of the news from just the past 3 weeks. And this is the articles that they have. The decision has been made. The head of Don Agrarian Association talks about how bankruptcy ban will save at least 30% of southern farmers and will kill 70% of southern farmers, I guess. Everyone is cutting duties. Analysts on why Don farmers will have negative profitability in the lean year of 2025. They wanted to limit foreign brands, but they got burned themselves. The head of the Don Agricultural Union speaks on the fault of factories in the growth of the recycling fee to 40%. The recycling fee is basically another tax that Russian government slapped on brand new agricultural machines, 40%. We need to shut everything down. How Don farmers are suffering from total drought and why farming is being finished off in Russia. And look at the dates. Very fresh. September 15th, September 13th. This one is from September 12th. They are giving up growing. They don't want to at all. They don't want to grow at all. Don farmers talk about plummeting potato prices and more expensive seeds. Surprise, surprise. China has taken the lead. Why the price of potatoes in Rostov has fallen 2.5 times in 2 months? Don producers suffer losses. That's September 7th. It's hard to slap the industry down in a year or two. Why Rostov province may get lucky with its harvest despite the crisis. What the next season will like depends largely on weather. Well, okay. It just shows us it's obviously a positive article. All right, it shows you that there's not just all doom and gloom in this media. So there are no solutions. Why Don potatoes are sold below cost price and what threat this poses to market. Interviews with the head of the potato union. As long as there is something to pump out, they will. Pumping out meaning the government, gets its hand into farmers' pockets. That's the translation. Don farmers reported crisis due to duties. Russian Grain Union supported them. Not just duties. Russian Grain Union on how the government brought down Don farmers with a fertile land to crisis. Yeah, Don has one of the most fertile lands in the world. Chernozem. Demand for equipment is below the baseboard. The president of Russian Grain Union talks about the crisis among Don farmers that could have been avoided. In 4 years, the profitability of Don farmers has fallen tenfold. Tenfold! Even the costs of harvesting will not be justified. Farmers reported a fallen sunflower harvest in Don. They are to blame themselves. The Russian Grain Union accused domestic plants of increasing the recycling fee to 40%. They had already reported that before, and that's late August. Why sow in dry soil? I'm cutting in half. Don farmers will reduce the area under wheat due to low profitability. Well, last 4 years, the profitability has fallen by tenfold. Sales have simply collapsed. The Minister of Agriculture will not cancel duties, and this is finishing off agriculture in Don. Either you mow hay or cattle graze. Farmers and white dairy prices in Rostov Oblast have increased by 23%. It's getting more interested, Absolute absurdity. Ports are clogged with legumes. Scientist proposes to give half of Donlands for sorghum and chickpeas. Farmers are against it. No sales during sanctions, say producers. I don't remember conditions like this year. Map of lost harvest in all districts of Rostov Oblast or Rostov province. Harvest results. They eat bread and sold. Heads of agriculture associations about the ban on bankruptcy for Don farmers. Risk of being left without land. Rostov province farmers will be given more loans. But the risk continues, increases. This is the closure of the farm. Putin supported the bankruptcy moratorium for Don farmers. Not the breadbasket of Russia. Results of wheat harvesting in all regions of the Don and some places the yield has fallen by 4 times. There will be no margin. Rostov port cargo turnover continues to fall, and grain exports have fallen by half. Now, friends, what the hell is going on? Are you asking the same question I am asking right now? Okay? Because I give you the official data that pretty much paints a picture of normalcy. Not the best year, but a little rebound from last year, which was worse than the previous year, than 2023. So, not a big deal. Rebound from 2024 in most crops, in most harvests. And then why are we seeing these articles? Let's say these articles are written by the enemies of the state, enemies of Russian people, the liberals. They call the liberals in Russia the traitors. Okay, they want to destroy Russia. They want to sell Russia to the West, to the evil satanic Americans. All right. Perhaps it's just bad reporters came to Russia, the Rostov, took over this media and started pumping lies. Well, guess what? If that was true, the KGB would be on them just like that. They're sitting there and saying, hey, give me a chance. So, by applying logic and common sense, we say that these articles are legit. If they weren't, they would be removed and the authors would be in prison by now, probably dead or tortured. So, this stuff is legit. Why it's allowed to be published in this media? Because Russian propaganda, although it reaches out to everything, its grip on media is like that is not very tight. Okay. Remember, I told you I'd tell you a trick. The trick is the weather. All the officials, a lot of trade unions, the associations and so forth, they, in these articles, they blame the weather. That is number one reason they're saying what's been bad weather. Guess what? The weather in Rostov province hasn't been much different from previous years. Rostov has become an area with very arid weather in the summertime. It's extremely hot and there's very few rains. it's something that just doesn't happen in 2025. It happened all the years previous. Of course, some years are wetter, that bring wetter summers. And some years, the summers are drier. But in Rostov, they are on the drier side. Okay? And yet the farmers blame the weather. Well, that's the only way they can get the information out. Okay? That is why the authors of these articles are not charged with treason and working with the enemy. That's why they're still not foreign agents, labeled as foreign agents. They give a big excuse as the weather. But if you read those articles, and I'm going to show you a couple of them, if you read those articles closely, besides the weather, bad weather, drought, bad weather everywhere. But besides, they say, well, it's not just the bad weather. It's also the policies. It's also the rising costs. It's also the high price of money. It's also lack of people. It's also dropping margins. I mean, with all my due respect, but in the last 4 years, the margin profitability has fallen by tenfold. Okay, that's not due to the bad weather in 2025, right? Well, let me give you some of the articles. I just gave you a digest, the list of the articles, but I'll. They are giving up growing. They don't want to grow at all. Don't farmers talk about plummeting potato prices and more expensive seeds? Aha! More expensive seeds. No kidding. I wonder where that information comes. Why is this more expensive seeds? Perhaps because they can't buy good seeds that give lots of good potatoes in the Netherlands any longer, because that's the Russian government banned them because of, the war in Ukraine. Perhaps that is the reason. Don farmers reported that potato production costs have increased. The final cost of the product does not always cover this, the Potato Union noted. No kidding. And then there's plenty of information. Everyone is cutting duties. Analysts why don't farmers will have negative profitability in the lean year of 2025. So in Rostov region, used to be the most producing wheat region in Russia. Now it's the worst region in the south. This year, Rostov region farmers will receive zero or negative profitability. The reason for this is bad weather in the region. Now, look at the bad weather, right? And federal duties on grain exports. So leave this bad weather out of the equation. The federal duties of grain exports. Well, also there are other reasons too. The weather this year and last year was quite difficult. But still, and this is the truth, still, this is the problem number 2. Thank you so much for your honesty, Andrei Sizov. Weather is an integral part of agriculture all over the world. The main problem is not the weather or the climate. It is the fact that the money in the pocket of agricultural producer has become much less in the recent years, has become much more difficult for him to survive this bad weather. And he's absolutely right, okay? It's not about bad weather. bad weather probably hurts, but not to the point where farmers go out of business. Because they have like watering systems. What's the right word for that? They have fertilizers for the soils. They have all kinds of tools against bad weather. But guess what? These days, it's become too expensive. They don't use fertilizers or have cut on them significantly. They don't use this water because they don't have money. They can go to the bank and borrow at 30%. Interest rate for the most of the summer was 21%. So they would loan around 29, 30%. Okay? And that's why bad weather is hurting them so bad. The next article. They wanted to limit foreign brands, but they got burned themselves. Head of Don Agriculture Union on the plants, meaning Russian agriculture machinery plants, fault for the increase in recycling fees of 40%. 40% is a new tax. It's called recycling fee that the government slapped on brand new agriculture machines. Pretty much on all, not just agriculture, on cars as well. Our domestic equipment manufacturers themselves lobbied the law. Of course, they thought it would be that it would mainly hit foreign manufacturers. They wanted to limit foreign brands, but they got burned themselves. Nice. So imagine how much more expensive now Russian farmers pay for the machinery. The foreign brands, gone. Very reliable, very effective, gone. Russian brands, the Russian producers stay, but guess what? Less reliable, less effective, but they cost more now than previously the foreign machines cost. So another article. We need to shut everything down. How Don farmers are suffering from total drought and why farming is being finished off in Russia. Now, again, let's put drought out of the equation. Drought, well, probably happened, but you know what? Every single year in Rostov province there are droughts. Farmers save on fertilizers, sell off equipment, and still end up with empty pockets. This is it, folks. This is the real reason. They simply don't have means to fight drought as they used to in the previous years. No one complained about drought in Rostov. Come on, it's 110 degrees for 6 weeks. I grew up in Rostov, I remember, okay? Drought my butt. Pardon my French. As long as there is something to pump out, they will. Don farmers reported a crisis due to duties. Russian Grain Union supported them. Export duties cut up a third of farmers' revenue. That's the policy that Russian government slapped. If Russian farmers want to export grain these days, they have to pay 30% export duty to Russian budget. That's how Russian state is trying to get more money, and I talked about it extensively before. That's how they're trying to get more money to continue waging the war in Ukraine. They put its greasy hand into every single pocket, deep inside, and try to get money anywhere they can. And they slapped 30% export duties on Russia's grain. And there you go. The farmers going out of business. Now, the next article. Not just the duties. Not just the duties. Russian Grain Union and how the government brought Don farmers with fertile land to crisis. Government policies. And that's Grain Union, Russian Grain Union. And I know that organization. I dealt with them myself in my one of the projects back in 2015, 2016. I met Zlachevsky, the head of a Russian Grain Union. A good guy. Wanted to collaborate with them. Didn't work out. But I still remember our meeting, and I still remember him being very reasonable, and I trust that guy. He's been very critical lately of Russian government. Russian government can lead agriculture out of crisis, says Arkady Zlachevsky. Again, this is the guy that I personally met, the president of Russian Grain Union. There are measures to save the industry, but so far there is not even talk about them in the public sphere. And then, his interview. Well, like I said, applying bad policies or not applying good policies, that's what it does to farming. And another article, and that's not about wheat, it's about sunflower. That's another big crop in Rostov province. Even the cost of harvesting will not be justified. Farmers reported failed sunflower harvest in Don province. Many farmers have increased the area under it for harvest planting sunflowers due to higher marginality than wheat. And yet, failure. Don farmers have been reported en masse that they are reducing the area under winter crops and giving preference to sunflower. But then sunflower harvest fell apart. And the last article I want to give you is I'm cutting it in half. Don farmers will reduce the area under wheat due to low profitability. Everything has become more expensive except for grain. Well, of course, grain they have to pay 30% export duty. In Russia, the area under wheat in 2025 sowing season will increase by 1,600,000 hectares, but 2,200,000 hectares more land will be allocated to sunflower. That the harvest collapsed. Due to the low profitability of wheat, farmers are massively giving preferences to more profitable crops, in particular oilseeds. Okay, now this is, to me, the real picture of the current situation in Russian agriculture. I've just given you information about crops, different kinds of crops. In reality, the same thing is happening with animals. It's not profitable to raise cows any longer, so milk cows are slaughtered and used for meat because farmers are giving up farming. The same thing is happening with chickens. Right now in Rostov and in some other provinces, the price for eggs have fallen down tremendously. It's back to the level of about 4 years ago when I still lived in Rostov. I was buying eggs at the same price. What is happening now is the chickens are being slaughtered and sold for meat. So the supply, the prices of 27 food products in Rostov province are being state regulated. So the producers cannot raise price for eggs and for 26 other products. So they basically closing down the farms. And what we just saw is kind of like to me, it looks like it's outcries of regular farmers. Yet the government gives bogus statistics that everything is kind of like all right. You can't lie like that because people will find out very soon. You know what happens next? Supply and demand. Supply declines, demand stays the same. Guess what happens? Prices go up. Yeah. Every freshman at economics school will tell you that. Studying economics. What's going to happen now? Russians already seen rising prices. Certain products, the prices are still the same, like eggs. Beef hasn't increased in price by a great deal because there's a great supply. They're slaughtering, milk cows, and then using it for meat. But most of other food products have skyrocketed, and they continue skyrocketing. Two reasons. General inflation in Russia is going up, and cost of producing everything, not just food, is becoming, increasing. And then the second, there's a huge crisis in agriculture. Lack of men, lack of seeds, lack of money, increasing costs. That is driving the biggest crisis in agriculture Russia has ever seen. Now, the main question remains, will there be shortages of food in Russia? And will Russian people be hungry soon? I've been asked this question so many times over the last 3 years. And every time in the past, I said, no, I do not believe Russia will have shortages. And I don't believe that Russians will go hungry. Because, you know what, even in the USSR, we never went hungry. Yes, our food was very basic, very primitive, I'd say. Potatoes, wheat, butter, milk, water, and whatever our moms and grandmas canned, in the harvest time, about this time. This was canning season, by the way. Every single day, my mom would be canning in August and September, whatever came in as harvest. Potatoes, and not potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, you name it. We had it all. Eggplants. So that's how we survived. And in the USSR, agriculture was in permanent crisis in the 80s, and yet we did not starve. And that's why I said, look, Russians perhaps will go back to having basic foods. They will not starve. Well, you know what? I am, for the first time, saying that with the way things are going in Russian agriculture, with the way that the state has been behaving, and with the policies it's been applying, there will be shortages. And some Russians, not all, but some Russians will go hungry. Shortages of what? First of all, shortages of Russian basics. Shortages of potatoes. We saw shortages last March, April, May, and potatoes were imported from first Pakistan and Egypt, and now they are importing en masse from China. I mean, that's a shame. In Russia, with the best soil in the world, they are importing potatoes from China. Incredible. So, potatoes, there will be shortages. Butter, milk, there will be shortages. Meat, beef, there will be shortages. And perhaps eggs, there will be shortages. And guess what? When there's not enough food, and Russia has just become net importer of the food, it imports more than it exports. It shows us that every single time Russia is going to be hit with a problem, let's say out of potatoes, of course, Russian government will go ahead and be buying potatoes somewhere else, like in China. And then from now on, it will be continuously forever buying potatoes from China, by the way. Mark my words. Russian industry will not, potato growing industry will not recover, at least not in a long time. So every time there's a crisis, they'll be buying food. The problem is the food that is imported from other countries is going to cost an arm and a leg. Potatoes this past spring cost 180 rubles per kilo. When I lived in Russia, I paid 20 rubles. So they increased by 9 times. And there are so many people that are getting poorer by the day in Russia. And they simply will not be able to afford food. They will go hungry. And at first, there will be those who are retired, older folks. And I think that many already going hungry. And then there will be low-paying, low-income folks who work at low-paying jobs that they will be laid off. They will go hungry. They probably won't starve to death, but they will go hungry. And yes, food shortages will be there. Only they're going to be, covered by the imports. Well, friends, this has been my message. Thank you so very much. Usually I turn on the live stream chat, but it's been an incredibly long message. I apologize. I delayed the start of the message. I had some technical problems here. Probably no live stream chat today. Simply no time. But I would like to invite everyone to finish this live stream with a prayer. I have a few people on my prayers list that I usually ask for help for. And, I invite everyone to pray along with me. Thank you. Dear Lord Jesus Christ, thank you so much for giving us this day. Thank you for food that you've placed on our tables. Thank you for roofs you've given over our heads. Thank you for our loved ones, our families. Please give us wisdom to keep the skies above our children's heads safe and peaceful. Give us wisdom to raise our children so when they grow up, they will not participate in any wars, and just be friends to each other. For now, please keep our children safe and healthy. Dear Lord, I am asking for Ukraine. Please help stop the bloodshed as soon as possible. People have suffered so much and the country needs peace. Please help every single Ukrainian who has been affected by this terrible tragedy. Answer their prayer and make their wish come true. Please help my country, Russia, assemble your strongest angels with sharpest swords into an army, heavenly army, and have Saint Michael lead that army. Send this army to get rid of the demons who have hijacked Russia, who we know by their names and by their faces. Please send your angels to help good Russian people to run the country, to make it peaceful, loving, and respecting. Dear Lord, I am asking for all people who are traveling. Please send them safe travels. Help everyone who is in danger of any kind right now. Send safety and safe harbors. Help those who are seeking any kind of asylum, running from evil. Help those single mothers and fathers who are struggling, trying to make ends meet. Thank you. Please help those who are helping Ukrainians and help those Ukrainians who are currently under attacks from Russian weapons. Send them safety. Please help the addicted, the sick, the cold, the hungry, the homeless, the jobless, the betrayed, the ones who are crying, the ones who are losing their faith, the ones who have lost self-esteem, the ones who are feeling betrayed, the ones who are going through divorce, the ones who cannot see their children, the ones who are crying, the ones whose hearts are bleeding. Dear Lord, please help everyone who is in need. Reach out and touch their hearts, fill them with love, and show everyone in need that you are with them. You haven't left them. You watched every step they take, and they're still your children, and they will be forever. Thank you very much for allowing us to come together and pray. Thank you for this community. Thank you for everyone who is praying with me, 3,100 people, and thank you for those who are simply watching us pray. Make everyone's wish come true and answer everyone's prayer. Thank you, and now I want to ask for your help. Some people from our community need your help. They are TMBC, Larry, Victor Garishan, Rod, Uliyun, Lee and Brenda, Daniela Fromm and her family, Rose Bronicky, Janice Burgess, Karsten, Teresa, Ron Bazoid, Ann Larson, Hannah, Jeffrey S., Katharina, Mark, Tom W., J.R. McKim, Gabin with Gary, Lisa, Harry, Terry, John, Linda, Paula W., Dennis, Jason, Susie, Tim, Rhonda, Dory, John, Taylor, Wayne, Darla, George, Pamela, Meta Spencer, David Porter, and everyone in Chernovtsi, Ukraine, Leif, Randolph, Grace, Dean Spooner and his church, Yelena, Natasha, Michael, Jake, Oля, Dasha, Sky, Svetlana, Sergey, Liz, Sergey, Koshkin Dom, Ron, Sandra, Mike and Mike, Petra, Joseph, Millie, Philip, Eileen, Highwayman, Jeff Gibson, Derek Martinez, Janice and Denise Abbott and Renate. Thank you, dear Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, friends. Thank you for giving me a chance to share another message with you. I hope you liked it. Please let me know down below in the comments what you think. If you haven't liked this message, please do so. That helps a lot. And I would appreciate if you leave some kind of a comment. If you have nothing to say, just leave a comment saying, "Hey, Konstantin, thank you, you're doing a good job." It'd be very, very, very pleasant to read comments like that. Thank you. There will be another comment, another message for you tomorrow. Please come back at the usual time. There will be a live stream. I'll make it shorter. This just been a very large message because I didn't know how to make it shorter, really. So much data there, and I tried, but that's the best I could come up with. I would like to remind you that you are absolutely awesome and you rock, and I am asking you to say out loud with me, as loud as you can, the following at the end. Carthago delenda est.